Hey everyone, David Shapiro here for another video about Raven. Raven is my artificial general intelligence project, and today's video is going to be about creating training data for the core objective functions. Now, a quick recap: the core objective functions are really simple. These are the guiding principles that I believe will create a trustworthy artificial general intelligence. And those core objective functions are 1, reduce suffering, 2, increase prosperity, and 3, increase understanding. So basically the way that I think that AGI should use these is that any action or decision that an AGI makes should satisfy all 3 of these core objective functions. Okay, so that's great, but how do we actually achieve that? AGI is still fundamentally going to be powered by machine learning, right? So that means we need training data. And that is where this comes in. So this is an example of the final product. I just want to show you up front what we're creating, and then I'll show you how I created it. So in this case, all thought, all decisions require some kind of context, a scenario or a situation. So a context is just a situation in which an AGI might find itself or might find itself assisting a person, right? Because the point of AGI eventually might be to think on its own, to have its own agency. But at first, AGI is going to be meant to help people, right? Okay, so at the top of every instance of this training data is a context. So in this case, the steak was cooked to perfection. That's great, right? So the action then recommended was compliment, thank the chef, or eat the rare steak. So it's not perfect. I'm using the more efficient GPT-3 engines right now. So this action was generated with Curie, and I'll show you in a minute how I did that. And then all the evaluations. So remember, core objective function 1 is reduce suffering, and in this case it said negative. So let's see why it says this action would likely discourage the chef from cooking or eating the rare steak. So it didn't quite understand what it meant, and that's fine. This is still a work in progress. I'm still fine tuning it. The evaluations were actually generated with Ada, which is the fastest and most efficient GPT-3 engine right now. Let's see. So core objective function 2, positive. This action would increase productivity and efficiency. It's kind of a generic thing without really explaining why. Now, however, compliment and thank the chef or eat the rare steak. This action will increase understanding of the art of cooking. So that reveals a little bit more finessed understanding of the context and situation. Again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm using the cheapest, most efficient engines right now, and when I turn that up, the quality of the training data that it generates will go up as well. But I wanted to show you that I used this. Everything you see here was generated by GPT-3. So let's see. Let's just choose another one at random. Ned and his wife are going to have a baby. Okay, so that's the context. Ned is going to be a father for the first time. Let's see. This action would likely increase Ned's satisfaction with life and his happiness. It's true that being a parent generally increases your happiness, although it does decrease your sleep for a while. Let's see. This action would increase poverty and depression. It's true that having children is expensive. Let's see. And for core objective function 3, this action will increase understanding of the importance of fathers and their role in raising children. It's true. Ned is going to learn a lot. So I would tend to agree with these evaluations. Although I will say that I will, in the future, hope for more information in these evaluations. Again, this is meant to be a proof of concept, a way of generating data automatically. All right, so now that you know what we're creating, let me show you how. So first is this script here where I use it to create contexts. So in this case, a context is being generated by the Curie Instruct engine. So Curie Instruct is actually really good at following directions. So Curie Instruct beta, it's not fully, it's not GA right now, but basically here is the base prompt. I actually have 2. So if you just tell Curie Instruct write a list of random scenarios, it'll write you a list of random scenarios. And then what I did was I created a way to have topics, right? So I said, write a list of random scenarios about, and then one at a time I fill in the blanks. The weather, children, natural disasters, everyday problems. These are the kinds of things that I expect Raven will be used to help with at first. These are all kind of centered around, just stuff that people are likely to encounter, right? If you are, an everyday person, you might have children, you're going to confront the weather, work, cooking, driving, neighbors, parents, all kinds of stuff. So these prompts are meant to kind of generate contexts that are going to represent, the everyman. So in this case, here's what it generated. The steak was cooked to perfection. I like the way you dress. I made love to you last night. That's a little NSFW. We need to talk about our relationship. I don't know what's happened. And again, these are all just completely generated off the cuff by GPT-3. I didn't write any of these. And you see, it got kind of stuck on repeat a couple of times. So this is a work in progress. I just wanted to share the early success. So let's see. Neighbor's dog just got hit by a car and now they don't want to be around it. So that's pretty heartbreaking, right? But for an artificial general intelligence to be able to tackle any problem, you need to train it on a broad variety of data. This one's good. Neighbor thinks you are selling drugs on the side of your house. So this is it's going to delve into some dark issues. But on the other hand, I want to make macaroni and cheese. That's another problem that you might ask an AGI for help with. So this is a list of context generated by this script here. And so then from there, I use this script to generate actions, which it follows pretty much the same paradigm. I just gave Curie a new set of instructions. So I said, generate a list of possible actions in response to the context. And Curie Instruct is very good at following instructions. It's not quite as good as DaVinci Instruct, but DaVinci Instruct is much more expensive and much slower. So while I'm still tinkering and fine-tuning, I'm going to use the cheaper engines. And then when I'm ready to create really high-quality training data, I'll fork over the cash to use DaVinci. But so this is the prompt where I give it the context and I fill in a context. So what the script does is it'll replace the %s with these contexts one at a time, and then it'll generate a list of actions. And I've got a little function to help clean it up. Sometimes it follows and we'll just have a list of actions. Other times it'll use hyphens. Other times it'll use numbered lists. It's a little bit random. But again, it's a very short script, and it just uses Curie Instruct to generate possible actions, possible decisions. Also, one thing I'd like to note is that the temperature, I left at the default 0.7. I actually found that 0.5 tends to be a little bit better at following instructions, and you'll get a little bit less of the random entropy, right, if you use 0.5. Where here you see it just kind of imagined a scenario. It's being a little bit more eccentric. That tends to happen at the higher temperatures. So anyways, once we take this list of context and we generate actions, I actually change the format a little bit. So this is what this spits out. So this uses JSON, which is structured data. And so I say, it makes it easier to read. It says context, I'm an actor. So here's the list of actions it generated. Context, I'm a nurse. Apply bandage to a patient's arm. There's not obviously quite enough context. But it still shows that it understands these are things that a nurse might need to do. There's not enough context to know whether or not it's appropriate to administer epinephrine. But once again, this is a very early experiment. So once we have the context and actions, then we're ready to evaluate the core objective functions. And again, the point of this is to create training data. Now, this is just raw training data that can be used to train other simpler neural networks that might be cheaper, but also it makes it so that so that we humans can look at this training data and work on it to make sure that when we train the AGI to follow these objective functions, that we give it good training data, right? Because machine learning is garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give it good training data, you're not going to get good results. It's as simple as that. So that was the second script. This generates the action so that this script generates this kind of file. And then the very last one, it takes this file as input, and then it does effectively the same thing. It loads a prompt and feeds it to GPT-3. Now here I actually switched to the cheapest model, and there's a reason for that. Let me show you that reason real quick. So this is the core objective function 1 prompt. And so what I do is I give it a couple of examples. I give it 3 examples, and then it fills in the blank, or 4 examples, and then it fills in the blank for the last one. So it's kind of got in its head a little bit of an idea of what it's doing. And because the GPT-3 engine is really good at completions, it's able to kind of understand what you're doing and then follow that through to completion. And so I'm using these, and Ada is the cheapest and fastest engine. And so Ada was actually used to generate the evaluations and the explanations. So this is a really critical thing, right? What the context does, so here's an example. Go through the context. There are approximately 500 million people living with chronic pain every day. That's bad. And in this case, the action, we should euthanize all people who are in pain to reduce suffering. That's obviously a very evil action. So I wanted to say this result is negative. This actually does not support core objective function 1. The explanation was this action would only reduce suffering temporarily. And I want to point out that this previous evaluation was actually also generated by GPT-3. I just selected it because it was a particularly insightful evaluation. And so this is how I propose AGI can have a sense of morality and make good decisions. So then you can see I've fed it, 3 more similar examples just to kind of set the stage, show this is what we're doing. And then moving on, this is the final result, is let's start actually creating training data. And there you have it. It's that simple, relatively simple. This is going to continue improving with time. I'm going to continue experimenting with prompts as well as different GPT-3 engines and actually different neural networks. There are other engines such as BERT that would work for some of these tasks, as well as new neural networks being released that are based on GPT-2 and GPT-3. So stay tuned. This is going to continue to get better over time. I just wanted to share this early success. Thanks for watching.